Welcome back to Society Case Files. My name is Robert, and today is Friday Rambles, number 3. I've got 3 more topics to discuss, and so here we are. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Otherwise, we're going to dive right in. The first topic today is going to be tabletop role-playing games versus board games. Now, you may have some preconceived notions of what I'm going to say, but I'm hoping that this is at least a marginally fresh take. I am not a huge fan of role-playing games that take a lot of combat or have a whole lot of crunchy rules and that sort of thing. I don't necessarily need my game to cover everything from asphyxiation to poison to whatever else it might. I pretty much need some guidelines for combat, some things to make things fair, and some random chance to just throw in a little bit of fate to the storytelling. But when it comes to getting down into the gritty movement speeds and encumbrance and characters suffering from bleeding and all this other stuff, there are other outlets that I think are far better at performing those tasks than a GM. Even with modern virtual tabletops and that kind of stuff to help you manage your hit points and conditions and all that other great stuff, it just feels like the wrong medium to me. And it has for a very long time. And that's where board games come in for me, or even computer games. Like, if I'm going to do a game that needs me to do a whole bunch of theory crafting, then I'd rather play a game like Guild Wars 2 or World of Warcraft or ESO, any of those games where there's a ton of ways that you can go at whatever it is you're doing. You can min-max your stats, you can rules lawyer up big time, and you're not really treading on anyone else that you're at the table with. In fact, doing so in an MMO is beneficial to the players around you. In some cases, they're going to praise you for it because they need help and you're able to provide it. Coming back to the topic at hand, I think board games are better suited for the more down in the weeds hard rules that you get in some that some role-playing games present. A great example is if you're playing a game like GURPS, then you're going to get a lot of really intense rules, and you can use them or not. That's kind of the intention of the game. You can pick and choose what makes sense for your group and the genre that you're using. But it really is designed to give you all the tools necessary to create a very in-depth rule system. And then there's even more intense ones like Rollmaster and so on, games like that, where they've got tons of tables. There's lots of ways to go at things like wounds and to cause you grievous harm and teach you how maybe a gun is going to react to armor and will it go through and all this other stuff. Whereas, while that's cool and all, the intention of the role-playing game is more to embody a character and then go on some kind of story. Combat may or may not be part of that story. In some cases, you won't have a choice, especially in something like Dungeons & Dragons, where you're sent out to deal with, say, marauding chaos beasts that can't be reasoned with. You're going to have to take them out. But for the most part, much of a D&D game or otherwise could involve quite a bit of role-playing, where you're adopting the persona of your character and communicating with other people and attempting to gather information, to investigate, to persuade, and so on and so forth. In fact, just recently, we played a Ravenloft game with a friend, and there was quite a bit of rolling, things like perception checks and a couple of things like picking a lock, that kind of stuff. For the most part, we didn't have a single combat in the 3.5 hours play session. But because of that, despite the fact that there are a lot of rules for that particular system, we didn't really need them because most of the time we were just talking. We were playing the characters and letting them develop and trying to understand who they were since it was the very first session. In the case of something where you do want a lot of combat, I've always felt that something like The Cursed City or Descent or Gloomhaven, those games have always seemed absolutely ideal for doing dungeon crawls. I mean, that's exactly what they're for. They've got rules that encompass upgrading your characters, making them better so they can tackle greater challenges. And that's really the intention of those games. Whereas with role-playing games, it's more like it's supposed to be sort of more on the playing the character type as opposed to beating stuff up kind of thing. And what I've noticed is that people have found a way to really bring those two things together pretty well. I mean, I've watched some of the streams where people show us how to play games, and oftentimes I'm like, wow, they roll a lot. They pretty much roll for everything, and it just gets a little bit distracting because at a certain point there's this flow going. You know, two people are playing, they're bouncing off each other, they're doing great work, and then they get interrupted with a roll, and the roll may or may not be necessary. In the case of some of the streams, they're really trying to showcase the rules and teach you how to play. So they're not going to allow it to go to a place where you just ignore them completely. And I get that. But at your average table, it just feels to me like a role-playing game should focus more on that story and more on those characters communicating and doing their thing than the rules lawyering and all that crazy stuff. And I mean, it's inevitable that when you play a game that has that is a rules heavy system, you'll have somebody who, for whatever reason, has dedicated a significant amount of their time to learning those rules and understanding how they can best, I don't want to say bend them, but basically min-max so that they can get the absolute best character and just tip the scales in their favor. Because you got a guy like that, and then you get somebody at the table who pretty much doesn't care about the rules and just wants to play their character. They have a great idea for a backstory. They want to share it with everybody, and they want to respond to the outside stimuli accordingly based on the character they've created. And when you have those two players, one or the other will become at least marginally embittered by the fact that one didn't take the rules seriously and the other one took them too seriously. And then you got everybody else who's sort of in the middle, who's just like, I just want to hang out with my friends and have a good time. And then those people are like, what is going on here? I don't really want to do a lot of theory crafting. I'm just going to kind of follow the path that it shows for my character and just try to have a good time. And I think that if we could separate out the ideas in our heads and say that the role-playing game is going to be more about story, and just sit down at the table and say, what are you guys interested in today? Would you rather have a bunch of ass-kicking combat, or are you kind of more in the mood for just a low-key sort of adventure that maybe it's going to get a little dramatic, maybe we're going to pull on some heartstrings, we're going to try and create an emotional experience here. What do you prefer today? And if they vote for the violence, then break out the board game, one of the ones that you keep the characters and keep playing after you're done, like Gloomhaven or, again, Curse City, and pick up where you left off. Run a quick campaign and have everybody get down and do some tactics and worry about their activations and roll a lot of dice and have a great time. But if they're like, I'm not really in a mindset for a bunch of this tactical thinking and grids and maps, I'd rather just go to a shared imagined space, escape all this crap around me, and not worry about anything for a while except for embodying the person that I've created to experience this story. Then play a role-playing game. I mean, I'm looking at my wall of role-playing games right over there, and I've got a ton of games that are just way, way heavy on rules, and it's so unnecessary in most cases. I mean, there's things, they've created rules for stuff that will very likely never come up. I can't remember the last time I had to look up a roll for asphyxiation in a game, and I've played quite a few. I mean, I've had people who almost drowned in the game, but they didn't get close enough to where I needed to go look up the asphyxiation rules. And I mean, sure, it's nice to have, I guess, but a lot of stuff can be done with just common sense. You don't need the rules to tell you specifically how to handle certain things if you have looked into anything at all. And if you want a more cinematic experience, you can ignore the way they deal with bullets in some of these games and just say that people don't take as much damage from getting shot. I mean, we know that in real life, getting shot is pretty much a down and out. There's very little chance that somebody's going to get blasted who's never been blasted before and run around still without, bleeding out. But, half these games, you can take 3, 5, 10 shots before you're even close to being in a position where you can't move anymore. And I mean, in a lot of ways, that's probably good for a game, because otherwise people would be done really fast. So I guess that what I'm saying is that if we're going to get into a situation where there's going to be a lot of tactical combat, there are better ways to experience it than your average role-playing game. Your average role-playing game has to do everything. It has to create a storytelling experience. It has to generate a method for a GM to create a story. Oftentimes it has a lot of world lore and stuff like that in there so that they can call upon it to create their stories. Then there has to be character creation, and it has to be robust enough for players to look for advancement and everything else. And all of those things make it pretty broad. Whereas like a board game like Curse City, the rule book is all about the rules. There's no lore in that book. There's a separate book for lore that helps you understand what's happening in the city. But for the most part, it is how to play this game. Now, is it perfect? No, absolutely not. None of them are. There's always going to be a question because some random thing is going to come up that the people who wrote the rules didn't think about. So you don't have to make it up anyway. But for the most part, if you want this, whatever that is, if you can find something that's all it does, it's going to do it better. Whereas there are some role-playing games like Vampire that try to be more storytelling. And what they end up doing is sort of having a struggle to present their rule system in a thoughtful way because it ends up being too esoteric. And Vampire doesn't empower the players to do what they need to do in order to participate in a super meaningful way as far as joint storytelling is concerned. So the onus of everything falls on the storyteller. The players are just literally embodying their characters, and they're just doing as they need to do to get through. And unfortunately, Vampire does allow a lot of min-maxing. You could be a really nasty, horrifying kill monster in that game if you wanted to be. And it isn't that hard. So the lighter the rules, actually, the easier it generally is to become something that is just horrifyingly deadly because they're not going to worry so much about balance. They're worrying about the story. I guess there has to be some balance there. Otherwise, you're going to get something of what you don't want, no matter how you go. And the bottom line, beyond everything else I've said, is that when you sit down with your players, regardless if you're going to play a board game or a role-playing game, it's really important to ask, what kind of game are you looking for? Because it may not be one that a GM wants to run. If everybody at the table's like, we want balls to the wall action, we want to be tearing people up, and we want this to just be a Mad Max kill crazy rampage, then the GM needs to know that up front, or whoever is hosting, because if your players come at you with all of that and then you present a political thriller that involves some backstabbing and backroom deals and stuff, they're going to be pretty upset, especially considering they probably made characters for the first thing. Now, it has been said that you could just look at the characters they create and you'll know what kind of game you need to play. But what if everybody at the table made their characters separately and then you get like some social climbers and some combat monsters and then some vague in-betweeners and then somebody who's completely fringe because they just didn't really come up with a cohesive plan, then you're in a lot of trouble. So you got to have a plan. And sometimes that plan might be, let's play a different game. But at the same time, however you do it, you do need to know what you're getting into and prepare yourself for a situation that is going to be hybridized. Now, maybe that's the part about role-playing games that I'm not getting. Maybe that hybrid between the board game and the role-playing game is what is appealing. And I can totally see that. If that's the case, then ignore me. I'm just a bitter bastard who prefers to play a very specific kind of role-playing game. And I still do enjoy my dungeon crawl. I just don't necessarily want to play it in a role-playing game. I want to play it in a game that it's designed for. But now that I've rambled about it for however long this took, I can say that I really do get the hybrid thing. And now that I've gotten here, where I've basically created that as my own conclusion, I can kind of appreciate the idea of that. I don't necessarily need it myself, but I can say that I understand, and I think that's kind of cool. Whatever we take away from this first section of the Friday Ramble, I appreciate having the time to have basically answered my own question. This next topic is Diablo 4 Seasons, and it's a perfect thing to launch off of the tabletop versus board game thing, because Diablo is literally designed to min-max and to build the best characters so that you can get through end game activity and get better stuff and conquer bigger challenges. All of that stuff is super fun. I enjoy doing it. I recently came back to it. I just did a stream last week about it as of this recording, where I basically decided that I wanted a crow that was at the end of the season journey, and so I dove in. Now, what I can say about Diablo 4 is that I really do enjoy it. I mean, it's kind of a guilty pleasure in some ways, but much as I really liked Path of Exile 2, I have to say that there is just something polished about Diablo 4 that I really appreciate. I don't know exactly what it is. It might be that it's a little more simplified. It might be that it's kind of dumbed down. I hate to say that because it's not entirely true, but when you look at the Path of Exile 2 stuff, it is a much more difficult game. The bosses are harder. There's a lot more to buy skill-wise and everything else. But ultimately, I just have more fun playing Diablo 4 than I do other games of its type. Now, that said, I'm not entirely sure how much more I've got in me because it is a massive grind. And the reason I said that I wanted to talk about Seasons in particular is because when the game came out, we didn't have that long to play before they immediately released Seasons. I mean, Season 1 came very quickly on the tail of the original release. Now, it took quite a while for Diablo 3 to put out Seasons, and it was sort of as I'm not sure it was a last-ditch effort, but it was an effort to reinvigorate the game. And the idea was really cool. Whoa, make a brand new character and start from level 1 and do these crazy season journey things? Yeah, that sounds fun. But by that time, I'd already played the living crap out of the game and tried the characters and really understood them and had a good time with them. And I had characters I really liked. And then when they started doing Seasons, they added the ability to resurrect the character, to say, I'm going to still play this particular character. Just bring them into this Season 2 at level 1 and I'll start them up. It's a small thing. I mean, you can just recreate them in Diablo 4, but I don't know. There's a psychological thing there that I think is missing. With Diablo 4 dumping them so quick and getting Seasons in there, it's a double-edged sword for me. On one hand, it's pretty smart. I mean, I guess Diablo 3 is up to 23. It might be 33 seasons. I can't remember, but it's a lot. 33, I think it is. And we're on like season 7 right now of Diablo 4. It's cool because right off the bat, they've immediately created the sense that you're going to play a character for a finite amount of time and then move on and play somebody else. And by doing that, we don't have the situation where maybe you are super attached to a character, or maybe you spent even more time with some character and now you're like, wow, I got to start all over again. But that said, Seasons really do kind of drive me crazy in one respect. And that is that every time it's just another freaking grind. Not just to get from 1 to 60 so that you can actually start playing the end game. But once you get there, you've got to get all your Paragon points. And then you've got to go through the pit to get your glyphs leveled up. And then you got to go through this so that you can get your Masterworks. And while there may be some new seasonal color to enjoy, that color generally suffers from being limited. And what I mean by limited is in the current season, there are these headhunts. They're kind of like hell tides or the vampire hunting thing. You've got a green section on the map. You go there, you kill a bunch of enemies, and do basically whispers. But the whispers are pretty much the same in each place. So you've got shepherding like wildlife, so you can escort them to a specific spot. You do 4 of them, you finish. You've got Dispel, where you find like a circle and stop somebody from summoning demons, I guess. You follow a wisp around, you follow a guard around. There's a few more. Pick herbs, burn them, kill monsters. And then there's the normal ones as well. There's quite a few, to be fair, okay? But the problem is that in order to get through the seasonal journey, you're going to do all of those a lot of times. A lot. Like the first 10 times I saved the animals, I was like, this is really cool. I enjoy this. I like saving the animals. It's actually neat. But now it's like, move, you little bastard, hurry, because it's just, at that point, you're just doing it to get the points to unlock the next thing so that you can finish whatever seasonal journey you're working on. And I find that to be a little bit of a shame. It's true of every activity in Diablo, though. You know, doing the pit, it's just like, just get it done, move. And you're just rushing through the content so that you can get whatever's at the end. Because that's a grind. That's the whole point. And I get that. But considering how much it takes to get to whatever you're doing, even when you're really fast, it just gets tiring. And to do that over and over every season, and there's nothing that really transfers over aside from map exploration, it's just, I kind of wish they hadn't put out seasons so quickly, just so that I would have had the opportunity to really get tired of playing a character at endgame and been really looking forward to starting over to see if I could do it better or something. Now, obviously, I haven't played 30 seasons of Diablo 3. I think I did 10 or 12 before I got tired of it. And Diablo 4, I've had less patience with. I think that they've had to tweak a lot about how to level up. And now with Season 8, I've heard and read that it's actually going to be more difficult. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that the difficulty of Diablo 4 now has nothing to do with it being a hard game. The difficulty is having the patience and endurance to grind enough to get to wherever you're going. Torment 4 is absolutely doable if you have the endurance to level up your glyphs, level up your masterworks, and do all that stuff and find the right gear to do it. It's not that you're ever going to feel like there is a real roadblock, a roadblock being you have met a wall that you can't get over. You can with the right amount of grinding. You can go out and get whatever materials you need, do the things you need to do, and get that stuff to master whatever you're trying to do. That's not the problem. If they make it more difficult, and I guess they do that through lowering your armor or messing with your resistances or increasing the hit points of the monsters, whatever they do, I still think that increasing the difficulty isn't necessarily going to be the fix they need for players to feel good about the game or to be excited about addressing that new content. I think that there's still going to be just a massive grind. Instead of tackling tier 4, you're just going to spend more time in tier 3 running nightmare dungeons or whatever it takes to get the mats to buy the next thing that lets you get into tier 4. And while sure, dragging out a little more time is probably good for Blizzard, the grind part has to wear on everybody eventually. I mean, the most patient person is going to lose interest in that kind of grind if it becomes more intensive to do the same materials over and over. Now, that said, if they made it harder and they just released an absurd amount of content, like I'm not talking 10 new whispers, I'm talking 50. Enough to where you'll be like, whoa, I haven't seen that one before, even after you've been playing for 12 hours. Then I could see it being more difficult and still fun. But considering that you will have seen everything there is to see in Diablo 4 within the first 10 hours, probably less, I just don't see more difficult equaling more fun. But I am sitting here coming off of a massive grind that I've been doing in the game. So I might be a little negative. I don't think so, though. I mean, I'm still having fun with it. I still enjoy it. I still feel the need to go back and play it. I obviously have some kind of creepy addiction to Diablo 4. For whatever reason they've chosen, they've decided that it's going to be more difficult and that they're going to challenge the players more. I would argue that it's already fairly challenging, but at the same time, I don't know. I guess that I would focus more on making the seasonal aspects more interesting. Not that they aren't interesting. The witchcraft one they've got right now is really cool. But I think I'd put more focus on that and less focus on changing the systems just to make it arbitrarily more difficult. Now, people they're listening to are generally streamers and maybe the community as well. I'm not entirely sure. But all the streamers I've listened to have basically said that they have gone out and talked to Blizzard and sent things to the devs and provided feedback from their viewers and that kind of thing. So that's cool. If that's the majority is like, man, this game's too easy, then kudos. I'm glad they're listening. But for my part, I'm lazy at this point, and I only have maybe one grind a quarter for gaming. I'm looking at maybe playing some World of Warcraft because for whatever reason, MMO grinding doesn't feel the same as ARPG grinding. Like, just, I don't want to labor on this too much more, but just playing Diablo 4 today, I was running through a pit, and the way that my character is built, she's just basically throwing daggers everywhere, constantly running through the dungeon, and everyone is bursting as soon as they appear on screen. I mean, literally turning into chunks. They could just as easily be blocks, and I could call the game breakthrough, and it would be no different. The monsters don't have to look cool. I have no idea what they are anyway. If I'm supposed to kill 50 bizarre goatmen, then I just have to pray that goatmen show up because I have no idea what anybody looks like. I haven't seen a monster in its entirety other than a boss in like 20 Paragon levels. I'm curious. What do you guys think of the grind of an ARPG? Is that the kind of thing that you're into? Is it just exhausting? Is it something that you look forward to? Are you excited about the game being more difficult? Let me know in the comments. All right, let's talk about my final topic today, and that is movie theaters. Last time I talked about some movie stuff. So this Friday Ramble, I was sitting here thinking, in my movie review of The Monkey, I specifically said I don't go to the theater anymore. And I wanted to talk about movie theaters a little bit anyway, because I just read a thing where movie theater owners are talking about what it would take to bring them back from the brink. They've said things like cleaner bathrooms, cleaner theaters, better prices, all kinds of stuff. I have to say that I'm not entirely sure any of that would necessarily help. Absolutely clean the damn bathrooms, for God's sake. But for the most part, the theaters I've gone to in the last year, and admittedly it hasn't been as many as I used to, haven't been that bad. Like inside, they're not that bad. It's been a very long time since I almost sat in nacho cheese in my assigned seat because the last person was a complete barbarian. But that said, it's really difficult to be excited about going to the theater these days for me. Back during COVID, when you were capable of renting the whole theater, and in some cases for dirt cheap. For example, I rented the theater to see the movie Dune when it came out. And I could have as many people as would fit in that theater come. So I basically told 4 or 5 friends and I said, hey, if you've got any friends who want to come, let's do this. I think we ended up with like 15, 20 people, and they were all people we knew. So I was 95% sure that the other cinemaphile maniacs that I invited weren't going to have anybody show up who just acted like a jerk and interrupted the movie and looked on their cell phone and made noise. And that was true. It turned out to be a pretty good experience. And the chairs are nice enough. They're recliners. They're leather. They're very comfortable. The sound is great. They keep it up. They keep the screen up. The projectors are great. Everything about it is fine. So I don't really think the theater itself is the problem. And then when I saw Top Gun Maverick, I went out to a place that is actually kind of a trek, but they have a really nice IMAX theater. And when we saw it, it wasn't as nice as the seats at my theater with the recliners and stuff, but the seats were still nice. It was very big, but it isn't like a Science Center style IMAX either, where the seats are climbing up in a stadium style. It's, it's really nice. And I have to admit that theater is also very well taken care of. Super cool. You could go out and buy wine and beer there. You can get plenty of normal food. There's a lot going on that makes that theater as nice of an experience as you can get. So, what is it about theaters? Well, as far as saving them is concerned, I could come up with some ideas, I guess, but my real thought behind them is the reason that theaters are basically failing is the cost is absurd. If you go with more than 2 people, you're spending an astronomical amount of money just to get in. And that has nothing to do with buying overpriced popcorn and soda. Or, God forbid, you decide to buy actual food there too, which is just going to be astronomically overpriced. So that's one problem. The second problem is that you are required to be there at some specific time. So whether you like it or not, they have their times and you've got to fit into one of those. And if it's not a very popular movie, there may only be 4 times, and those might not be convenient times for you to go. Now, obviously, that's how movies have always been, but at home, most of us aren't just watching cable. We're not just showing up at 7 o'clock to watch whatever TV show. We buy a season pass and then we watch it whenever the hell we feel like it. And with movies requiring us to be there at a specific time, that is a mark against them when we compare to being able to stream it or watch it a few weeks after, or if the movie doesn't do as well, sometimes really, really fast. In fact, even when a movie gets really great reviews, it sometimes comes out quick, like Black Bag. I think that came out the second weekend after it was released in the theater. Might have even been sooner. And The Monkey didn't take too long. It was basically like 5 weeks or something. So unless you're just gagging for the movie or you're really offended by the potential of spoilers, there's no reason not to wait if you want to see it at your leisure at home for less money. But ultimately, the biggest threat at movie theaters, in my opinion, is the other moviegoers, because you can't predict them. You can predict everything else. You can predict the time. You know that you're going to watch an ass load of trailers and commercials, both of which, if you go to the movies often, you've probably already seen. And then you've got to risk all the people who may or may not be respectful. They might be sitting there with their cell phones the whole time, chatting away. Sometimes they're going to talk to the screen. Sometimes they're going to yell about other things. It's crazy, the kinds of stuff that you get at a movie theater. I have to admit, that's one of the primary reasons I stopped going, because I just kept having the misfortune of showing up and having somebody bring an entire meal into a theater where they're in a recliner, or that's just smells disgusting, or people chatting loudly with one another, people answering their phones and not leaving the theater, people texting right in front of you so you can see all the light on their phone while you're trying to pay attention. The whole benefit of the movie theater is the immersion, being able to turn off everything around you, not be distracted by your cats, not take phone calls, not get someone knocking on the door, have the lights down, no windows, nothing to make you go, hey, what's that? All that stuff is why I went to the theater. But then you'd get these jerks, and it was too expensive for me to do that. What else is wrong? Well, I have a 77-inch OLED TV. It's freaking nice. I saved up for it, and it's really, really cool. I've got a really comfortable Chase lounge. I've got a Sonos sound system that I can set up with Atmos, and it sounds great. Now, are these things as good as going to the theater? Yes and no. No, because it's not a 10-foot screen. But yes, because I can sit 8 feet away and it feels like a movie, because, my screen takes up the majority of my vision when I sit that far away. I can have a recliner. I picked up this recliner from Wayfair for like $350. It's amazing. It's also electric, just like the theaters. It's got cup holders. I mean, we can get the theater experience at home. We can buy it. I could have turned this room into a movie theater experience. I could have had these two windows tinted. I could put in blackout curtains, put in some more seats like this, and get a big projector right there, 4K, and this room is now a movie theater. And the only thing that sucks for me is that I can't watch first-run movies here. I think that we have the technology now to have turned our homes into real cinematic experiences, and so that also makes it difficult to want to spend the kind of money you have to for a movie theater. So what kinds of things could a movie theater do to bring people back? Well, one of the first things is not juicing up those prices for the private theater rentals. The private theater rental when I did Dune was less than $200. After COVID kind of ebbed out, they still offered them, but they were really expensive. Like it got up to $400 to where you would need to invite quite a few people to go. Like 14 people going to mine was a super deal. Whereas had I done it much later when they were talking $400, I mean, I don't know enough people that would want to go to a movie when I did that would be able to go. So it became pointless. But doing the private movie rentals for a reasonable price, that could definitely go a long way towards saving them, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it's guaranteed money, I guess. You know, pick some times that you're not doing well anyway. You know, maybe 2:00 on a Wednesday, you'd offer that, you know, private theater rental and let someone rent it out for $200. And hey, you just made basically 10 people worth of movie, regardless of how many people they bring. And then you're bringing in people to do concessions. Something else, I guess they could try and turn it into more of a niche experience. I know there's a lot of places that have proper meals that you can eat while watching the movie. You know, I have a table and you can get all kinds of booze and whatever else you want while you're watching the movie. But that starts to infringe on the idea of how immersive can it be? I mean, I've eaten dinner while watching movies too, and you know, I'm looking down to cut up my food and stuff. You're missing stuff in the movie, so I'm not entirely sure if that is necessarily the answer, but you know, turning it into something a little bit more than just a movie. The budgets for movies really do play a part of this too, because they're so freaking expensive now. It's hard for movie theaters to lower the prices. They certainly can't. I mean, they need to be as high as they can get in order for the studio to make their money and for a theater to make some cash too. They've got to have, you know, the $14, $15 a ticket. That has to be standard. I mean, they can't necessarily lower the price if they want to make back $200 million budgets, $300 million budgets, whatever craziness they do for blockbusters. I think that's why we see digital versions of the movie coming out so shortly after they release, because they're like, we need to make more money. We need to be making this cash quick. I don't care about the iTunes percentage. Sell the thing for $25. Let's make some money. And that makes sense to me, I guess. I don't know. I feel like in a lot of ways, the movie theater system has been broken for a long time because it's just so expensive, but it was really the only way to see movies in a great way. And now that that's not so much true, the broken parts are a lot more difficult to ignore. So I know that there's tons of directors and people out there who are still trying to sell us on the idea that movie theaters are the only way to see a movie, specifically their movie. And I know a few are cinemaphiles like Quentin Tarantino and Martin Scorsese. They are definitely cinephiles. They're movie historians. So their opinion is going to skew towards old movie. And I get it. That's fine. But my problem is that they're seeing it through the lens of their own experiences, and they're not really trying to see it from other people's experience. They're just thinking back to all the nostalgia they've had. The times in the past, in the 90s, when going to see a movie was super exciting and the theaters being grungy was kind of part of the fun. But now, and maybe it's just because I've gotten older, I just want to be comfortable when I see a movie. I want to treat it more like a theater experience. When I'm going to a play, people don't just yammer. people just seem to behave themselves. I want people to treat a movie in the same way, to be just as respectful. And sometimes we don't get that. For me, if I could guarantee that a movie is going to be like those things, that's one thing. But at the same time, the reason that theater is so exciting is that it's not going to be the exact same every night. Someone's going to make a mistake. Someone's going to trip. Someone's going to use a different inflection that brings about a completely different emotion. If you went to see the same movie 4 times, you might catch something new. Absolutely. I still catch new things in movies I've seen many, many times. But it's not the same. So it's not a theater experience. It's a movie theater experience. And so while I can accept that Chris Nolan and Tarantino and Martin Scorsese, they all really firmly believe in the movie theater experience, I can accept it. But I don't think that their word is going to be enough to convince someone that they will have a significantly better time watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood at the theater than they would at home. Because I went to the theater and saw it, and it was great. But then I waited to see other movies at home, and I had just as profound an experience. Possibly a little bit better because I didn't feel rushed or stressed to get there at a specific time, nor did I have to become annoyed by the cringeworthy freaking commercials that they just deem necessary to put in the front, some of which generally are propaganda for keeping movie theaters open. I don't know. What do you think? What do you think movie theaters can do to come back from the brink of extinction? Because that's where they feel they are at. Despite the fact that my movie theater is quite often completely full in the parking lot with nowhere to park, and they've got plenty of people wandering around in there during the later part of the day and in the weekend. These places feel like they're going out, and I don't blame them because, again, as I've said in this huge ramble, there's plenty of excuses for why they should probably already be extinct. But what do you think? You have any ideas on how movie theaters could save themselves? Do they deserve to? Should they go away? Is it kind of a waste of time? Is it an outdated model of presenting film? Let me know in the comments, and let me know what you think. Anyway, this ramble has gone on long enough. This was Friday Ramble number 3. Robert with Society Case Files, signing off.